Another Savior. Holy, 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 Adimebujuku. Another Savior.
Welcome back to the Africa News Channel, your number one destination for bold, unfiltered Pan-African reporting. Today's broadcast is one that will spark deep reflection, outrage, and hopefully, collective action. If you're new here, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single update. To all our returning subscribers and members, thank you for your continued support. Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this video are based on publicly available reports, expert commentary, and trending footage from global social media platforms such as Twitter. We do not claim sole ownership of the content and encourage all viewers to conduct further research. This video is for informational and educational purposes only and abides by YouTube's community guidelines. Across social media and news platforms, a controversial statement made by French President Emmanuel Macron has caused an uproar. According to several sources, Macron allegedly declared that France will not be leaving Africa, no matter how hard Africans try to make them leave. He went further to claim that Africans are still not capable of governing themselves and thus require French oversight to develop. For a continent with centuries of history, vibrant culture, and proven leadership, this statement strikes as not only degrading but also rooted in a colonial mindset that many thought had long been buried.
The audacity of these people is just baffling. Emmanuel Macron has announced that France is not ready to leave Africa because he said that Africa still needs France, because France wants to make sure that Africa is fully developed. That France wants to make sure that Africa is fully developed before they leave. How long has France been in Africa? If your job was to develop Africa, you really are the worst developer in the world. So Emmanuel Macron has said that France still has a lot of work to do. They will not leave Africa because Africa still needs France. Emmanuel Macron, you're fooling nobody, okay? You are fooling absolutely nobody. The people that need Africa is France. France needs Africa in order to develop or to continue developing, because without Africa, France is nothing. Just look at the words of Mitterrand. This is literally what he said, that without Africa, France will be a third world country. And now, because France has been kicked out of Africa, guess what's happening? France has realized they've got no more, they've got nowhere else, nobody else to exploit. They have nobody else to milk. For all these years, the countries, the former colonies of France, have been unable to develop because France has stolen half or almost all of their entire national reserve. And he has the audacity to continue on this line. You're fooling nobody, Emmanuel Macron. Okay? Go back to your country and look at the drawing board. Start again.
Does France still view Africa as a colony it owns? How much longer will Africans tolerate this form of neo-imperialism disguised as development assistance? What makes this more shocking is the clear contradiction that stares the world in the face. Despite claiming to help Africa, France has zero gold mines on its soil yet boasts one of the world's top 3 largest gold reserves, most of it traced back to its former colonies. Meanwhile, none of these French-speaking African countries have seen real sustainable development from this so-called partnership. Instead, it has taken young African leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, in just 2 years of leadership, to begin transforming his nation. So, the pressing question is, if France truly cared about development, why hasn't a single one of its former colonies flourished under its influence? Before we continue, we'd like to remind you that you can support this channel by joining our YouTube membership or purchasing a super thanks below. Your support keeps us going, helping us bring you uncensored African perspectives. In another clip currently trending on Twitter, a French politician was heard on a podcast openly stating that France must remain in Africa by all means necessary, because it is crucial to France's own economy and future.
Nous avons besoin de rester très présents sur le continent africain. En tout cas, nous devons absolument rester ici parce que sinon, c'est la dégringolade complète et nous le paierions cher dans l'avenir. Donc, il y a un intérêt national bien compris qui est que la France reste
sur la question de la lutte contre le terrorisme, en l'occurrence, c'est ça.
Mais pas que. Écoutez,
c'est-à-dire,
moi, je veux pas être naïf parce qu'en diplomatie, il faut pas être naïf. La France a besoin d'être présente en Afrique, y compris pour ses intérêts économiques. Voilà, c'est pas la peine qu'on se raconte d'histoire parce que Moscou, eux, ne s'en rendent compte pas. Moscou veut absolument assurer une présence parce qu'il y a un intérêt économique. Nous devons avoir la même logique. C'est aussi pour nous une manière d'assurer notre indépendance, en tout cas une partie de notre indépendance. En l'occurrence, vous avez parlé de l'uranium tout à l'heure, et ça nous paraît absolument essentiel. Donc, ne soyons pas naïfs, on peut nous accuser de ce qu'on veut. La France a un grand passé en Afrique et elle doit conserver une partie de celui-ci pour l'avenir.
At what point does national interest become exploitation? Why should one nation prosper at the total expense of another? Even more damning, the lecture from a US university features Dr. Howard stating bluntly that Africa must never be allowed to escape debt. According to him, poverty is the leash by which the West controls African states and gains unlimited access to natural resources. Is this not economic warfare? The hypocrisy becomes even more glaring when the same West that claims Africa is unfit for self-governance actively sponsors coups, imposes corrupt leaders, and sabotages any effort towards sovereignty. Many Africans now believe that the only reason the West is afraid of Captain Traoré is because he represents the type of fearless, independent leadership they cannot control.
We will not allow sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital for the prosperity of everyone else. So let's get clear about that. Okay, and this means all the economic structures, all the global institutions, and the economics we teach everyone is all designed to keep Africa exactly where it is. And whether it is Europe or US or now China, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap.
Could this be why assassination plots continue to emerge against him? Meanwhile, another video making rounds shows a European commentator brazenly suggesting that it is time for the West to wear its imperialist hat once more and recolonize Africa. His justification: that African politicians only enrich themselves and shop in Paris. But what he fails to admit is that many of those so-called corrupt politicians are backed by Western interests and are allowed to thrive as long as they maintain the status quo. Why are leaders like Traoré, who reject foreign loans and promote national sovereignty, being targeted instead of supported? Why hasn't the West allowed Africa the freedom to choose its own path?
So many of these countries around the world are incapable of governing themselves, then it's time for us to put the imperial hat back on to say, we're going to govern those countries if you're incapable of governing yourselves, because enough is enough. We're done being invaded.
Because our own national security risk is at stake.
Exactly.
National security interests are at stake.
You could say that about pretty much all of Africa. They're incapable of governing themselves and benefiting their citizens because the governments there are all about looting and pillaging and lining their pockets and going shopping in Paris instead of actually making their country better.
People on the left are going to watch this. They're going to say, wait a minute, Eric Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely. Yes. Enough. Because if you go to these countries and you see how they suffer under absolutely corrupt, made-up governments that are just criminal syndicates, the people of Africa, the people of Latin America, a lot of them deserve better. Now, some countries are...
Sir Omali Yeshitela's message still echoes strong across social media. He has continuously called out the African Union, describing it as a mere puppet of Western governments used to silence revolutionary voices. According to him, Africa needs a true revolution, not just against external powers but also against internal puppets who sabotage the continent's future for personal gain. Do you believe it is time for Africans to rise against these puppet regimes and take back full control of their resources, leadership, and destiny?
From this parasite that bleeds Africa, that bleeds the world, that bleeds Afghanistan, that bleeds the people of Yemen who are dying by the thousands even as we have this discussion. This is the basis of a Brexit. It can't stand together anymore because the host is rejecting the parasite. And it's creating crises throughout Europe and throughout the imperialist world. I think it's necessary, brothers and sisters, to say that there has been a natural trajectory by African people for closer union. We know that we're talking about having this discussion in part because in 1884-85, Europeans sat at a table in Berlin, Germany, not a single African there, and carved up Africa into the territories that we now sometimes call countries and illogically refer to as nations. Africans didn't do that. It was Europe that did that. It was Europe and imperialism that required Africa to be divided so that the resources of Africa, both human and material, could come and pave the streets in London and grow the buildings in Amsterdam and in Sierra Leone are not paved. And the people in Sierra Leone do not have there's no natural there. It's necessary to keep Africa divided by European imperialism and by imperialism. That children can exist here. So that Steve Jobs and others can achieve some notoriety from the content that comes from Congo. At least 12 to 15 Africans in order to keep Africa in the conditions it's in today. We talk about a united Africa and African because of what has done to Africa to keep us divided. We know it's true. We saw 100 years or so ago, Marcus Garvey organized the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities Leagues that stretched across the globe. More than 11 million African people everywhere were connected to this. Africa for Africans, at home and abroad. That was the cry. Not Africans for Nigerians that didn't even exist until the British created it in 1915. And Flora Shaw, the mistress who would become the wife of Frederick Lugard, came up with the name nigger area. Not this false national consciousness that has been imposed on Africans around the world. So that when the Portuguese found shrimp on West Africa and then named it for the Portuguese word for shrimp, Cameroon, it is not true that they are shrimp despite the fact that the people call themselves Cameroonians today. It is a false national consciousness. The false national consciousness that created the American Negro, that created the Black Brit, the Afro-Swede. We are one Africa, one nation, and we must have closer union. But in order for that to happen, it has to be a revolutionary union. The Organization of African Union, created on May 25th, 1963 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, was part of an effort to circumvent efforts by Kwame Nkrumah to build a single union of African states. And instead we come up with an Organization of African Union that codified the colonial borders that were created by Europe in 1884 and 85. We have to be able to break out of this, but it's going to take revolution in order to do this. African revolution in order to do this. African revolution that will destroy imperialism and the world economy that's responsible for the growing immiseration of the masses of people around the world. Uhuru.
On a more positive note, we would like to applaud the efforts of the AES Bloc for championing education through the establishment of the Thomas Sankara Pan-African Centers in Burkina Faso and Niger. These institutions will educate the next generation on African pride, self-determination, and resistance to imperialist manipulation. Can this model be replicated across all African nations to build the continent we dream of?
On 15th April 2025, the Thomas Sankara Center for African Liberation and Unity in Niger was inaugurated in the capital city of Niamey.
Le Centre Thomas Sankara est véritablement un lieu d'étude de la science de la Révolution. Nous sommes une bibliothèque socialiste et panafricaine et surtout un centre de formation politique et idéologique. Alors, comme je l'ai dit, le Centre Thomas Sankara a été créé il y a 3 ans et demi à Ouagadougou. Nous avons 4 principes fondateurs. Il s'agit du panafricanisme, de l'anti-impérialisme, de l'émancipation des femmes et du socialisme scientifique. Nous trouvons que ces principes sont les pierres angulaires de l'idéologie révolutionnaire que Thomas Sankara a avancée.
The center is located at the headquarters of the Union of Nigerian Students, a mass socialist Pan-African student trade union. The center will work with students to organize a weekly study circle based on revolutionary theory and geopolitical debate.
Ces centres, nous ne l'avons pas conçu pour une simple salle d'activité. Bien au contraire, il est un lieu de mémoire, un foyer d'idées, un espace de combat et de stratégie révolutionnaire pour l'ensemble des scolaires nigériens. Thomas Sankara, figure emblématique de la révolution burkinabé, ne représente pas seulement une époque révolue. Il incarne aujourd'hui pour nous jeunes un idéal vivant, celui d'une jeunesse africaine consciente, intègre, audacieuse et debout.
The Thomas Sankara Center in Niger will work with the Thomas Sankara Center in Burkina Faso, organizing joint activities and regular exchanges. The center has taken months of planning.
Je peux dire que c'est vraiment une opportunité énorme, voilà, que tous les pays de l'AES puissent bénéficier d'un centre Thomas Sankara, comme le centre Thomas Sankara que nous avons au Burkina Faso ici, plus précisément à Ouagadougou.
As we wrap up today's broadcast, we urge you to stay woke, stay united, and remain fearless. The continent is watching. The world is watching. If you found this report eye-opening, please like, share, and subscribe to the Africa News channel. Don't forget, your support through our membership or by purchasing a super thanks keeps us going and enables us to continue shining a light on Africa's truth. Until next time, stay strong, stay proud, and stay African.